Good Monday morning, everybody.
Morning.
Who is going to get us started with some positivity? Who had a great weekend? Go ahead, Sue.
I'm putting in an offer in this morning.
Offers are good. Offers are good. We're going to be talking about offers today a little bit. Tracy, what do you got?
Meeting a client this morning, listing to sign and accept an offer. She was away and she had no access to technology, so it delayed a little bit. And had a serious negotiation going on last week about some very bad water. And after I was told a few times the seller would put it back in the market, even though the water would still be bad, I got the good news over the weekend that they're agreeing to the holdback and doing the right thing.
Awesome. Awesome. I will say there's definitely something lost in our industry with all the digital signing. When I had first gotten started, everything was in person, multiple copies. So you'd literally print out like 7 copies of a purchase and sale, and you'd have to get 7 copies signed. You know, one for each brokerage, one for the buyer, one for the seller, one for the lender, one for each of the attorneys. I think that comes out to 7. But I will say a lot less gray areas. I think people understood what they were signing a little bit more. The relationships were deeper, right? So you could get more referrals because you're spending a little bit more time with these people. But it's crazy to think not that long ago, I'm printing out 7 copies of a purchase and sale to get it signed by everybody. So just brought me back, Tracy, when you said, yeah, gonna go meet with her in person to have her sign, but you're still just having her sign one.
I'm gonna print one also. I'm not just gonna do electronic. I'm also gonna print one, but I do remember those days, Steve, and if I remember correctly, there were several times where I would print the 7 copies. I'd go before they signed, we went through every single line of the purchase and sales. They would initially each pay, sign a couple pages in there, and then the other agent would go ahead and scan me and fax me back a copy. So now I had wasted 8 for 8 different contracts. Oh my God.
Yeah. The signing of a purchase and sale would be an hour project going through paragraph by paragraph. So it's actually something that had come up on our chat with a client not really understanding, or saying that they didn't understand what they signed, and just thought it'd be something that we throw out as we're talking about this, that you guys have really got to understand, and especially we're going to talk today about these new form changes for the NAR settlement. You guys have got to understand these forms inside and out, right? Watching KB's video or watching the MAR video one time, I don't think is enough. You guys have got to print these forms out. You got to read through them. I would be doing like some mock, pretending you got a buyer and filling these forms out, making sure you understand what these forms mean, what every paragraph means. Go ahead, KB.
I just want to that point, Steve, because you weren't on any of the Q&As that we've posted so far. So one of the recommendations that Lauren and I have had for the different Q&A sessions that you guys will see in the calendar for the forms is print the forms out, read the forms, and highlight the areas that you have questions about so that we can talk about them in depth. It's just one of the things that we're trying to do to make sure that we're covering all our bases and everybody understands what we have to do moving forward and what the contracts say.
Yeah, what day is the Q&A this week, KB?
Tomorrow, and then after everything goes live, we're gonna do once a week, every week for the next 4 weeks. So
okay,
just pay attention to your calendars. We kind of move them around days, time, so that there's no one set time, so that people can jump on can find one that's convenient for you.
Anybody just kind of where you're at? Maybe you've watched KB's videos, you've come to a Q&A, you've done some of your state stuff, and you still kind of have a question that you want to throw out on the table? No stupid questions. This is new stuff for everybody. Okay. I obviously don't understand every single state in depth, but I do understand kind of at a high level every state of what's going on. And one of the things that I noticed is it appears that only Massachusetts has changed the purchase and sale to get the compensation into it. The other states have all changed their exclusive listing agreement. They've changed their exclusive buyer agreement, right, to make sure that all of that stuff complies with the NAR settlement. Has anybody else seen anything where purchase and sale for your state has been changed to include the compensation besides Massachusetts that I might have missed? So I know most, in working with KB, I know most of the states are advising that they are still working on changing on their forms, that the listing agreement and the buyer agreements were the first things that they wanted to make sure that they got done. So we may see some states start to do it. I think it's a pretty clean way so that everybody clearly knows what's going on, the way that Massachusetts did it with their purchase and sale, to just get it right in there. This is the compensation for both parties. This is how it breaks down who's paying who. Any Mass agents have any questions on that purchase and sale? Okay. One of the things that I know there's some confusion about that I want to make sure that we all understand is that we are taking I see your hand, Jen. Let me get this thought out and then I'll come back to you. We are taking the stance that we are not going to do broker to broker compensation. If broker to broker compensation is what caused this, one of the factors that caused this lawsuit to begin with. So right now, when we list, we take a listing for X%, we offer out maybe half of that to another agency. When the deal closes, we get a check for, let's say it was a $10,000 commission, and we were offering out half. So we're going to pay XYZ brokerage $5,000. That's broker to broker compensation. And so we're not going to do that anymore. Part of the lawsuit said, wait a second, you charged me X and then gave half of it to somebody else to negotiate against us. I'm not happy with that. I didn't understand that. I would have never signed for that. So that's what got us in this jam in the first place. So you're starting to see some brokerages come out and take that stance, and I think it's the right one. That doesn't mean that your seller can't offer compensation, right? They can just pay the buyer broker directly. So at the closing, instead of paying us $10,000, your seller pays us $5,000 and pays XYZ brokerage $5,000. Does anybody have any questions on that? I want to make sure we're very clear on what we mean when we say we're not doing buyer or broker to broker compensation. It shouldn't be anything that makes you nervous. You could still go out and negotiate your deals. Your seller can still compensate a buyer's agent. It's just not via our brokerage. We're good on that? All right. Jen, you had your hand up.
Hey, so I was just thinking about the other states that it's not going to be spelled out, and I would feel so uncomfortable helping somebody sell a house where it's not written anymore. It's not promised in MLS, and now it's not in the purchase and sale. How do you know you're going to get paid? So I like that form 311. I think it's 311 in the MAR forms, where and maybe you just do this as a separate addendum or just attach it to the purchase and sale, but maybe give the verbiage to the attorneys so they can create something like that. But it basically breaks down the commission so that you at least feel comfortable knowing that you're promised pay.
Yeah, KB, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so Jen, we don't know 100% yet what the purchase and sales are going to look like for the other state. I know Connecticut and Florida, I know for sure, are still working on rolling out forms. Rhode Island, I haven't heard a whole lot about, but there's a good chance that it could be in there. But one of the things to keep in mind is that form that you're talking about, there's a 311 and there's a 310. I think the 310 is the broker to broker one, so that's the one we won't be using. But every state has some sort of a compensation request that you can have your buyer fill out that is that goes to the seller. So you will have an addendum. Every state calls it something different. Some it's an addendum, some it's a disclosure, some it's a rider, they're all different. But every state does have one of those right now. And then obviously you'll have one of those signed, and then there's places that you're going to be putting those things in that loop, and it would be written into the purchase and sale if it wasn't in there. It would have to be. So we don't really know that they don't have it yet, right? We're still waiting. They technically have until the 17th.
If something happens between, now and then, because a lot of the MLSs have already removed the compensation fields, right? So you're going to start showing properties where the compensation is 0 or unspecified, or right. So we can no longer count on the MLS to say, oh, you were offering compensation, right? So you really got to understand when you're showing now, we've got to have an agreement in place. The buyer is going to compensate you. Martin.
Sorry.
Like for the Berkshires, I know their MLS already took it off, but like I'm showing 2 this afternoon, and I've asked the broker, the listing agent, they've said they do offer compensation. So, but it is off. I know the Berkshire MLS stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Go ahead, Katie.
So it's out of Stellar too in Florida, and I believe Smart MLS is removing it as of last Friday or today. So the only MLS that we're going to function in that is not removing the compensation fields completely is MLS PIN. So that is in Massachusetts. So anyone, just so you guys are aware, as a brokerage, when we're putting on a listing, we are going to take on the unspecified. So we're not going to say we're not offering compensation. We're not going to say we are offering compensation. There's an option in there that says we'll offer compensation, just not on MLS. We've decided, and I spoke to MAR Legal, that unspecified is going to be our best bet. So that's what we're going to do in Massachusetts.
All right. So if you're listing in Mass, you're still going to have the option to put compensation in there. You're going to pick unspecified for all the compensation questions that you're going to get asked if you take a listing. And Martin, a lot of what I've read and kind of just the way my mind works, if I was in production, would be, as a listing agent, you also work with buyers. You know how the game works. You're not going to see an offer come in and tell your seller, oh, we shouldn't compensate this buyer's agent. You're going to try and work with the parties. That buyer's agent probably put in a lot of work. I mean, maybe they didn't, but they put in some work. Right now, is it going to be the same comp that it used to be, especially it's a competitive? Maybe not. But not compensating, I don't see that happening much. Is there going to be the 80, 20, 90, 10 rule, and some brokerages are just not going to, and they're going to tell their sellers, don't offer, you don't have to? Maybe. But I think for the most part, this is a cooperative industry where we've got to work with one another. And most agents don't just do one side. They work with buyers and sellers, and they know what it's like to be on the buy side. I think we would all agree the buy side is more work than the list side. So what other questions are kind of just lingering out there? Has anybody structured a deal with the new forms and you want to just talk about it? That would be nice to hear. Anybody used any of the new forms yet on a deal? Put something together? Tracy.
I actually met a client over the end of last week on Friday, and I did my first listing with the new forms. So kind of interesting. But we were able to get through them all. I reviewed them before I met with them, but I wasn't sure if they were going to be where I could find this. So I reached out to Jay, and Jay's always an awesome resource. I'll tell you, I don't know what I'd do without him.
You can pay her later, Jay. KB, just quickly, is there what's the best way, just because I'm not the best with Dotloop, for what's the best way to find the most current form that an agent should be using? Which folders are the best ones?
So Right now, if you create a template for your state, buyer, or seller, all the new forms are going to pull in. So it's easy to just create a test template and just print every single form that's in there and read through them. Honestly, that would be the best way, but they're in all of the listing and buyer folders. So they're pretty easily accessible. The old ones have been removed as they're replacing the new ones. So you won't get confused.
So
But
there's
actually,
each state has a, mass listing side, mass buyer side. Those would be the folders if you had to go find something without doing a new template. But the easiest way, just start a new template. All the docs that you would typically need that would be required will pull in.
Yep.
Okay.
And Lauren and I are in the process of recording all of the forms. So I'm working on Florida. She's working on Massachusetts and Connecticut. I'm working on Florida and Rhode Island. So we should have all of those recordings in Zendesk that walk through each section of the contracts I'm hoping tomorrow. So we should be done.
Go ahead, Doreen.
I know we touched on this, I guess, last night here in Florida, for those who don't know. I am going to call Wanda because I am placing an offer today, and it has zero compensation. And I spoke to the listing agent yesterday, and she said, put it in the price. So I'm going to find out for all the Florida people on the call or that was reading the thread yesterday. I'm just looking for the verbiage to use to distinguish compensation and the actual offer price. So once I find that out, I'm going to post it and see where we go, because I was reading so much and it's so ambiguous to me at some points. And someone had asked in one of those groups online that can the compensation that gets put into an offer price be also negotiated? And I don't know the answer to that. So I'm going to try to find all that information out before I submit the offer today.
Go ahead, KB.
Yeah, so Doreen, I think that maybe what Wanda is saying is just, roll it into
No,
the
she
transaction.
hasn't. No, that was the listing agent saying that.
Oh, okay. Okay. So even I think what the listing agent is saying, right,
Yep.
is just roll it into the transaction. So it's all about what the seller is going to net, right? So I would add the compensation to the price that you're offering, and then use if you go into clauses to consider in Zendesk, use the same verbiage that we use when there's actually a clause in there that says, when you're putting an offer in on a property that they're not offering compensation. Typically, we would have used that for like a for sale by owner or something. And previously, the verbiage is going to be the same. It's just the buyer asking the seller to compensate the brokerage, the buyer's brokerage. That's my opinion. That's kind of how I'm understanding what you're asking. Steve's nodding, so I'm assuming he thinks I'm right. But that would be my gut, and the verbiage is already in there for you. I would use the same exact verbiage that's in clauses to consider in Zendesk. But obviously, still talk to Wanda, because I always love talking to attorneys.
Yeah, I thought also there is the compensation agreement, which is that I think it's the CASB 1. That's going to say that the seller agrees to pay the buyer's broker, and we can get the seller to sign that. I don't know that you need to do that with the offer, but maybe you could do that with the purchase and sale. Or actually, in Florida, you're not doing an offer. You're going right to that purchase and sale, correct?
Yeah, they do go right to
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's just you're going to attach that CASB 1, Doreen, which says the seller's going to pay you, right? So here's our offer, $400,000, and you're also paying the buyer's broker $5,000.
Yeah, that's what I'm confused about, because she flat out told me, the agents she said, put it in the price. So that I was confused.
I think she just means raise the price to include what you want for compensation.
Right.
Right,
That I
that's what she means.
understand, but that's where I'm confused. Like, I don't know if I still need that form if it's in the price, because I can just put into the additional comments that, the price is this and the compensation is that, but I'm not sure if, is it like the same process?
I think the form just makes it nice and clean.
Right. That's what I'm thinking, that this way I could do the price with the compensation and just add the form so that they understand that portion of the price or the offer is for commission. Yep. Compensation, should I say now. But I just wanted to clarify that, and I'll find out from Wanda just to verify that doing the right thing so I don't lose this deal for my buyer because I put the wrong words in there. I would feel horrible. He's been after this community since November. I'm working with this buyer. So yes, we do work hard on the buy side. It's been 9 months in the making. And for them to say, oh, you don't get anything, it's,
Yeah.
it's funny.
All right, any other questions on the form stuff? All right, let's just open it up for general roundtable. Who's got something going on that'd be a good share for the group? What'd you learn on a deal that you're doing, or what are you struggling with? Yeah, I mean, Jen just put in the comments, if it's going into the price, it sounds like the buyer is paying it. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, guys, whenever we're doing concessions or raising price, the buyer is paying it, right? It's just the buyer doesn't have the funds to pay it. It's no different than when we've asked, the buyer doesn't have closing costs. They can't pay the closing costs, right? And so they say, all right, instead of offering you 400, we're going to offer you 405, but we want $5,000 back to pay our closing costs. I mean, the buyer agent compensation is part of their closing costs. And so you can just think of it as like, it's a closing cost to a buyer now, and asking for it in seller concessions is another way that this is going to get compensated. Justin.
So I hear what you're saying about including it in the price, but is there any concern like on appraisal coming back? Because that's my biggest thing. I mean, even if it's a few thousand off, I mean, that could be a huge difference. So now my buyer's got to come to the table with a whole lot more out of pocket. And I feel like this is kind of taking away a lot of our negotiating power, because I feel like, listing agents are going to start using that more towards like leverage. Even if their property has been sitting on the market forever, they can say, give us a full price offer, we'll pay for that commission. So I just kind of want to hear thoughts on that one.
Yeah, it definitely could affect appraisals, but the deal is it's going to affect across the board. And I think across the board, buyers are going to struggle to pay a buyer agent commission, right? So I think we're going to have to get creative. Maybe they can pay, 0.5%, 1% directly out of their pocket. Then maybe they're going to get a little bit of concession from the seller. Semper Home Loans has come out and said, hey, we'll pay up to 1% to help pay the agent's commission, right? So it could be coming from multiple different parties to help. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, I just, I think there's certain markets where maybe the buyers have a little bit more money and they should be able to pay buyer agents direct. Other markets, the buyers aren't going to be able to come up with this. They're going to have to build it into these deals. Who else has got a scenario going on? That'll be a good share. So,
Well, I put it in a chat and you responded yesterday. So I have a buyer that.
Oh yeah, I can talk through this one. So okay. Sue's got a buyer that is looking to make offers on 2 different properties, right? One of the listing agents has just told her to put it in as a backup, and so she's nervous about that both offers getting accepted, even though only one is a backup. Correct, Sue?
Yeah, and it's contingent on the buyer inspection and what they're going to request back, according to that agent.
The current buyer that they have under contract, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah. So I don't. We can always attack 2 different properties. We just got to be upfront with the listing agents of what's going on, right? So in this case, Sue's got 2 properties. One just on the market. There's no offers on it. We can make an offer on that property. 2, it's they like a second property. That property is under agreement with another buyer. Those buyers are doing inspections, and I think the listing agent might be getting a little nervous that maybe these guys are going to back out. So she's saying to Sue, hey, put your offer in. So in this case, you can definitely write up an offer that just says, hey, here's our offer. It's backup. Please note, I've got an offer in on another property. This would be subject to making sure we didn't get the other property. But yeah, just so you know, we'd love to buy this if your buyer backs out of that deal. And just be upfront. That way there, you can't get stuck having an accepted offer on 2 properties.
Would you do that on the property that doesn't have any offers? Language saying that, there is,
Well, you wouldn't need to on that one because the other one has it in there,
okay.
right? So you make that one. If they accept it, they accept it. You don't have to say it's subject to hearing back on the other one first, unless it is. If they want the property that's under agreement that they're, with another, that you're a backup on, if that's their first priority, then you got to go after that first. And your offer on the one that doesn't have any offers on it has to be in with, hey, here's our offer, but I am waiting to see if this buyer backs out of this other deal. We can start the negotiations, but I just being upfront with you. If that other deal falls apart, my people are going to move forward with that offer.
Yeah, because the one that's backup is their number one property, and the one in Massachusetts is secondary.
Just know if we're going to write that language into an offer, it really weakens that offer, right? But it could, you guys know, sometimes these negotiations can go on for a few days back and forth. So while you're waiting to see if that buyer backs out of their first priority, you could be trying to structure the deal on this other property just the whole time, saying, hey, look, let's just see if we can even agree to terms, right? But I want your sellers to know if these other people come back to us, we're going to back out of this. But let's just see if we can even come to terms. Anybody have any other thoughts or questions on being in this scenario where you've got a client wanting 2 properties? Any other strategies that I didn't just throw out on the table that might help Sue? All right, well, I'll be excited to see how that one plays out, Sue. Let us know. But
I have a quick question.
Yep.
Are these same listing agent or different listing agents for this situation?
Sue, is this different listing agents for the 2 properties?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
All right, last chance. Anybody have another scenario you need help getting answered or share for the group? All right, like I can't stress enough. Oh, go ahead, Sue.
Well, this goes back to the 6D. Last week, the attorney asked for the 6D on the condo in Springfield. And when I was talking with Corey over the weekend, and it was a cash deal. So why would I need a 6D if it's cash? And he said, you really don't. I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in theory, the attorney could close without a 6D. I don't know that there's a law that says, but your buyer should want that. Like they don't, basically the 6D is making sure that the seller is up on all their fees. So as a buyer, you don't want to buy this thing. That's great. I bought it cash. And then you find out that they owe a $4,000 assessment, that they haven't paid their condo fees in 12 months. Right. So that's what we're trying to do, is trying to protect your buyer with that 6D to make sure that everything is paid up for the responsibilities of that seller and that condo association.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, guys, take the time to understand these forms. This is getting real, and it's now, right? The MLSs are changing. You guys need to have these buyer agreements in place. You need to be having conversations with your buyers. And then you need to know, if you're in Doreen's situation, it's time to write an offer this week, which forms are you going to use? How are you going to structure the deal? Have you talked to your lender? Can they help with the compensation? Do you have a preferred lender that's willing to offer up some of that? So I'd be having these conversations, because you don't want to be, up against the wall trying to get an offer in and not know. So that should be the focus for this week. If you haven't been focused on it already, get comfortable with these forms. All right. Have a great Monday, and we'll be back after it tomorrow morning. Take care.
Have a good one.